In this lesson, we will be understanding global state management in depth and we will start working on it. Using global state management, we will solve the complex challenge of updating and getting value from nested widgets or even multiple screens. To understand the challenge better, I have prepared a visual representation of our app. Let's have a look. In Flutter, an app is constructed using widgets, right? These widgets are organized in a hierarchical structure known as the widget tree. This tree represents the arrangement and nesting of various widgets forming the visual and interactive elements of our app. In our app's widget tree, we have this My App widget at the top, and then the Material App widget, and then two screens, main screen and the settings screen, and then we have this Theme Switcher widget which is nested to settings screen. So this Theme Switcher widget has a logic of changing the theme mode of our app, right? So if we need to pass that data from this widget to Material App of main.dart, then we need to pass that data first into the settings screen, and then settings screen should pass that data to main screen through navigator.pop, and then main screen should pass that data to main.dart's material app, and only then material app will change the theme of our app. That is a lot of hassle but still achievable. It might take some time, but this can be done. But imagine this theme switcher is nested into multiple widgets, and then passing the data from all these widgets is nearly impossible. So instead of passing data, it's better to have variables at the top of our app so that all widgets can have access to it and they can modify and listen to changes of those variables. So let me create a global variable here called isChecked, which is of Boolean type. And as all the widgets have access to it, Material App can watch for the changes and update theme mode according to it. And as all the widgets have access to it, this switch widget can modify this variable, and every widget watching this variable will get the update. And this global variable that we created acts like a state change too. So every widget watching this variable will get re-rendered when variable value is updated. So even if the widget is nested for 100 times and is watching for the change, it can still get the update. So this is how global state works in Flutter. So instead of passing data and lifting state every time, we make widgets watch for the changes of a global state variable and do whatever is necessary inside of that widget. For global state management in Flutter, we need package, and there are multiple packages that we can choose from. Let's have a look. So the first simple and most popular package is the provider package. It's simple and widely used. Although there are many other packages like Riverpod, Block, GetX and more, we are sticking with provider in this project. The reason is that it's easy to grasp and the concept it uses are the foundation to other state management packages. The good news is, once you understand provider, transitioning to another state management package becomes easier, as many of them share similar principles and concepts. Alright, so let's go ahead and install this provider package in our Flutter app. Open up terminal, get the package, hard restart the app and start debugging. So in provider's state management, we have basically two main things, provider and a consumer. Provider is something that provides the data, and consumer is something that consumes the data or gets the data from the provider, alright? It might be a little confusing, but don't worry, we'll work on it. So the first thing I want to do is to create a provider for providing the state value. For that, let's create a new folder and name it providers. So the provider that we need to create will hold the data related to theme. So I'll create a new Dart file and name it theme provider, alright? And now in this file, let's create a new class with the name theme provider. So now we need a variable over here to track the theme mode of our app. So for that, let's create a new Boolean variable with the name is dark mode checked and set it to false for now. So this is just a normal class, but to make it a global state, we need to extend change notifier class, which can be imported from material.dart, alright? So now that we have created a provider or a global state, we need to keep it at the top of our app so that all widgets can have access to it. For that, we need a provider package, so let's import package provider/provider.dart. Now to keep this theme provider at the top level, we need to wrap this My App, which is our main widget, with an special widget called Change Notifier Provider. So wrap this My App with a widget, and this widget is Change Notifier Provider, alright? And this widget has one required argument, create. So this argument expects a callback function with the callback value context, and this function should return a change notifier class, and in our case it's the theme provider class, alright? So let's use this theme provider over here. And here if the function has only one return statement inside of it, we can use arrow function here instead of this return and curly braces, alright? This flat arrow returns anything on its right side to the function, so it's the same thing. So by doing this, we have finally placed this theme provider at the top of our app, And now every widget can access this provider and modify or get the value from this provider. And so now we need a consumer for getting the updates from the provider and for rebuilding the widgets if the value of provider changes. And in our case, this material app widget should look for the changes of this provider. So we need to wrap this material app widget with the consumer widget. But working with this consumer widget is complex, so we'll be taking a rather simple approach. So instead of wrapping this widget with the consumer, we will get provider directly in this build method. Now typically when you want to get the data from the class, you create an instance of that class in this way. Class name, variable name, which is equals to the class. But creating this class instance in this way will only get the variable value once and will not look for the state changes. So to make this widget a consumer and listen for the state changes, we need to access this theme provider class a little bit differently. So for that, let's create a variable theme provider. Now this is not a class, only the variable name, alright, which is equal to the provider, and instead of this create, we will be getting the context. So provider dot off, and we'll be passing this context of this build context, alright. And then we need to define which provider should this look up to and define it here. So theme provider. So now I'll be able to access the variable of this theme provider. So theme provider dot is dark mode checked. If it's true, then use the dark mode, else use light mode. And currently this variable in this theme provider is set to true, so we'll be getting the dark mode in our app. Now whenever this value changes in the provider, this build function will get recalled and the widget gets rebuilt. Keep in mind that you cannot initialize this provider here because it needs context. So always keep it inside of this build method, alright? In this way we can listen to state changes using provider in any widget throughout our app. So in the next lesson, we will be working on updating the state value in the provider and notify all consumers about it. So I'll see you at the next lesson.